As millions of small businesses struggle to stay afloat, the $350 billion federal payroll protection program intended to help them has run out of money. As the Senate works to inject another $250 billion into the program, some activists are warning of the dangers should Black and Latino small business owners not have access to these funds. From a Newsweek op-ed, the failure to provide emergency relief to entrepreneurs in our communities will lead to economic insecurity at a scale that could trigger the extinction of Black and brown businesses for generations. The writers of that piece are with me now. Nathalie Molina Niño is CEO of O Cubed and author of Leapfrog, The New Revolution for Women Entrepreneurs. And Michael Blake is a New York State Assembly member for the 79th District, vice chairman of the Democratic National Committee, and a candidate for U.S. Congress in the Bronx. I want to get your take on a headline that was making a lot of buzz yesterday, which is that according to filings with the Securities and Exchange Commission, restaurant chains received millions from the Paycheck Protection Program. Assemblyman, are those small businesses?
Not at all. And the reality is we have to understand what's happening right now is a challenge in many of our communities. Our small businesses, Black and Latino, are not being helped in any real way. And the challenge of what we're seeing is the intentionality of the program was supposedly to help our businesses on the ground, and it did nothing of that. Black and Latino and Asian and Native American businesses always are being left behind, and the PPP program did exactly that. And quite frankly, for Donald Trump and others, they should stop tweeting about liberation and start negotiating right now to help us on the ground.
Nathalie, talk to me a little bit about the role. Yeah, talk to me a little bit about the roles that banks are playing in all of this and the bias that is baked in there that is affecting these communities.
Absolutely. I do want to make one point, though, is that we can't put the Shake Shack in the same bucket as a Ruth's Chris. Ruth's Chris is a franchise. A Shake Shack is, in fact, a wholly owned company that has stores in multiple places. And what that means is you've got one single massive employer versus, when you go to your local Cinnabon, that's owned by your neighbor, right? That's a franchisee who owns your local Cinnabon. Mm-hmm. And so I want that nuance to be really clear. In terms of the bias, at the end of the day, banks are there to maximize their profit and to triage in a way that favors their highest ticket customers. That is their job. And so when the government enlists a bank, or in this case, many, many banks that had existing relationships with the SBA, there needed to be something in that legislation to ensure, very simply, that cronyism wasn't the law of the land, that they didn't favor their big ticket customers, that they got a clear message that we're triaging the same way that a hospital triages who is sickest. We're triaging who needs this money the most. And that means the smallest businesses. That means the people who will absolutely be the lifeline for their communities. And that is not what the legislation did. And so it's not surprising to me. Those of us that even saw the legislation before the applications opened, we could see the nightmare about to unfold. And it has been worse than even our worst nightmare.
Assemblyman, in your article, you also highlight that for the next federal relief package, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer and Speaker Pelosi proposed a large percentage of the next round of stimulus be distributed via community development financial institutions. Why is that so important?
Because the big banks did nothing to help us on the ground. When we think about the collaborations, I'm doing this interview from the 3rd Avenue Business Improvement District, and the collaboration that they are doing with Spring Bank is helping our businesses. When you think about how only 70 businesses that work through the 3rd Avenue bid out of the 23,000 in the Bronx were able to get funding, it's because the larger banks did not help us in any real way. And so the next bill, not only do we have to work through the CDFI, we need fintech companies to collaborate with us on the ground. When we think about this is about helping our restaurants, helping our barbershops, helping our beauty salons, who otherwise may not have access to this. And honestly, the intentionality of Trump and the Republicans and what they're doing is disgusting because they're trying to reward big banks and large entities rather than helping people on the ground. And our frustration repeatedly is stop continuing to promote white supremacy out of the White House and the language and the rhetoric, but help get dollars to us on the ground that we need right now.
Now, we've talked about banks. We've talked about the way the legislation was written. What would you want to see in future legislation to get this right?
I think there's some history that needs to be fixed, right? The initial legislation provided no guardrails to prevent banks from abusing this. And so we have to go back and fix that. And that's not unprecedented. When the Katrina relief came out, it didn't come out perfect. And amendments were made and changes were made. So we have to go back and fix all of the things that, for example, Michael Blake was just mentioning are broken. Forward looking, though, we really have to focus on ensuring that there is triage that focuses on the businesses that need it most, and that we provide, as Michael said, tech to make sure that these small local banks don't choke, because we're going to see a peak and a surge in the amount of applications. The other thing that I think is problematic is that we excluded 1099s, which means that if you're a restaurant owner and the majority of your employees are independent contractors that get 1099s rather than being full-time employees with payroll, then you are getting absolutely no relief. And we need to reevaluate that decision to ensure that folks who are independent contractors, gig workers, are not totally getting cut out of this picture. I also think that the other thing that's going to happen is that we have to collect data. At the moment, we are not collecting data. So people like Michael and myself and so many other leaders in the space do not easily have access to knowing who is getting this money and who is not. I don't think that's an accident, and it needs to be fixed.
All right, Nathalie and Michael, thank you both so much for your time.